I'm a bulldog. So Georgia, who I'm picking.
What's up, everybody? Dawg Nation. It is Wednesday night. That means it is before the Hedges time, brought to you guys by Kroger. Got a pretty good show today. We've got a funny bit. We've got a recruit telling us what you don't need to ever do if you want to get on Kirby Smart's bad side. We've got DawgNation Conversations, a visit recap with three-star wide receiver target Eugene Hilton Jr. We've got another one with Zier Addison, a very talented offensive lineman in the 2025 cycle out of Florida. We've got quarterback talk. That's the moment. That's the entree du jour with everything going on right now. Everybody wants to know who's the 2025 quarterback going to be. Got a lot of stuff to talk about here on Before the Hedges. But first off, I got to talk about it. What did everybody think about the home slate for 2025? Basically, it's an inverted kind of think about your favorite scene from Top Gun when you're like, he's inverted, giving them keeping up foreign relations. That's what the SEC did with Georgia's 2024 schedule. That means they get Alabama, they get Texas, they get Kentucky, they get a terrific home slate next year. And then they go to places like, of course, Jacksonville, I believe Mississippi State, Auburn, and Tennessee as well. So that is a loaded schedule. The other thing that's going to start happening with the SEC schedule I thought is interesting is they're going to stagger, not really stagger, but move forward all the start times about 45 minutes. So the normal noon kickoff now will be 12:45, so that will give everybody a little bit more chance if you got that noon game. Georgia doesn't normally have that noon game, but if you got that noon game, you get about 45 more minutes of tailgating to get to the seats. So that'll be pretty cool. But before we get started with our Big Five, I want to talk to you guys a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed. One thing I want to do is I kind of want to call to everybody's attention our current Next Generation series right now. It's something that DawgNation has done ever since I've been here on the team, dating back to 2015, I believe. That's when somebody on our staff writes the stories of the current new generation, the new breed of Bulldogs. We've already been through 2 chapters right now. The first chapter was on Ellis Robinson IV. Hope you guys got to read that. Got a lot of great feedback from that. And this week's chapter, we published it on Sunday, centers on 5-star linebacker Justin Williams. Justin, highest-rated linebacker that Kirby Smart's ever signed. He ran a 4.44. Great personal family story here. But Georgia, this time a year ago, had not offered Justin, who would go on to become the number 1 linebacker in the country, and he was already a 5-star this time a year ago. But Georgia did not offer Justin Williams until, I believe, March the 30th. So that's 10 more days. Think about that for a second. A great example is Zayden Walker, the number 1 linebacker in the 2025 class, or for the longest time. I think he recently fell to number 2. But can you imagine Georgia not offering that young man until 10 more days from now and still signing him? Well, that's what Georgia did. And Georgia did because of a very cool story, a very cool backstory. Justin's father basically had 2 teams that they watched in the house growing up, that those were their teams, and that was the Michigan Wolverines and the Georgia Bulldogs. So when it came time for the young man to get his own spending money and his own spending account, something pretty cool happened, which would bode well, foreshadowing, I guess, for eventually what Justin Williams decided to do. Here's a clip. It's just one of the stories, the type of stories we try to tell on our Next Generation series each and every week. I want you to take a look at it. So tell me about this. I believe it was 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah.
Your mom got you a debit card to get money to you.
Yeah.
She was away, and you got to choose your logo.
Yeah.
Why? What was that logo? Why was it that logo? Did you look back at that and say, it was fake?
When we're at the bank, me and my brother were both at the bank, and he's with me. We're waiting there for like an hour. So I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to get this done. And then I finally get they're like, we get in there, they start talking, all the jibber jabber, whatever. And then they give me like, oh, what card do you want? I'm like, this one looks nice, this one looks nice. And then I see like a couple colleges. I'm like, no, I don't want that one. I was like, I want the Georgia one. And then now I have a Georgia debit card since I was like 8th grade. So it's just crazy how like faith works and everything like that.
Do you have it on your phone right now?
Yeah, I actually do. I can show you right now. Oh snap! Where did I put it? That was right here.
How much of that do you sit there and look back and go like, that was fake?
Honestly,
meant to be, or what a weird.
I think about it every day. Honestly, when I look at it, getting food or something, I'm like, that's just God. Honestly, anything that could happen, He was just all the steps that He's building up to Georgia. You know, they came in last. They're like, oh, we got to do this right now. You know, this is God. Honestly,
pretty cool stuff there from Justin Williams. I tell you what, really cool. I think it's always really cool. One of the things when I was talking with Kaylee Mansell in our segment that went with the next generation, the tandem video segment with all of our profiles, is that's more proof that Glenn Schumann is just living right. He's way late. Like normally Georgia is like recruits 5-star linebackers when they're freshmen or when they're sophomores. See a guy like Tyler Atkinson in the state of Georgia. Georgia offered him basically when he was going into the 9th grade, summer of his 8th grade. But Georgia catches those guys a little bit quicker when they're around the southeast, especially in the state of Georgia. But Glenn Schumann had to play catch-up, had to come from behind and hawk down Oregon for that recruiting win there. But as luck might have it, this was a young man that had a Georgia debit card when he was in the 7th, 8th grade. Picked it out. He had it in his wallet. Of course, now everybody's got the digital Apple Pay type card wallet, card reader, and now he's got a digital Georgia debit card. But I thought that was pretty cool. How many of you guys out there watching tonight actually have a Georgia debit card and have had it for like more than like 4 or 5 years? I think that's pretty cool to see that one of the marquee signees in the 2024 class was rocking a Georgia debit card in the state of Texas, in the Houston metro area when he was in middle school. So that's pretty cool there. Guys, let's start right now with everybody's waiting on it. We'll start our Big Five right now. We want to talk about quarterbacks. I think that is kind of the story everybody wants to talk about. What's going to happen with Georgia football recruiting for the 2025 class with quarterbacks? You know, I got a few opinions. We've written a lot about this on DawgNation.com. The one thing I'll say is I feel like it is still a 3-man race, and I feel like Ryan Montgomery's in it, the 4-star quarterback out of Findlay, Ohio, Ben Roethlisberger's high school, Matt Zollers, who announced his unofficial dates, is going to be in it as well. And then you've got, you've got Juju Lewis at Carrollton. We've got a lot. We've got highlights of these guys. We've got images of these guys. But really, for me, I got a few thoughts on what I see happening here. Number one is like I said earlier, I think this thing is not determined yet. I feel like, we're watching Juju right there. Here's a take I've got, and this is just kind of my opinion on Julian. I feel like if you had to tell me, somebody asked me this at a camp, an event the other day, if you had to tell me whether you would take USC or the field in terms of where he eventually signs, I would probably take the field. And right now the field feels like Georgia, Alabama, and Auburn, rather than him maintaining his Southern California commitment. That's just my feeling there. I got the feeling that all of this is probably going to come to a head in about a month. The reason why I say it's going to take a month is because that's probably about how long I think a lot of parties and a lot of the moving pieces need to work here. I feel like really the unknown right now is Matt Zollers, because Zollers, let me tell you a little bit about him. Zollers, who's now on 3 rated actually higher than Lewis. I think he's a top 100 prospect on the composite, the number 8 quarterback in the country, number 10, I believe. You see the highlights right there for Zollers. He's a former soccer player, former receiver, a former running back. He's got legs. He dazzles in the theatrical, the improvisational play. Big arm, very athletic kid. And I think Zollers is going to be very interesting because I think he's the unknown. I think he's going to take his visits. Georgia's actually going to get the last visit. And if someone told me, if they said, the best visit out of those 4 would be the one to Georgia, then I think it gets very interesting because I think there's going to come a point where Georgia's going to want to – Zollers might be ready to commit, and then Georgia's got to see, where is Lewis at? Is Lewis ready to commit? Is Lewis ready to decommit, flip, and make his decision? That's going to be very interesting because I think it's going to feel a little political. I think Julian Lewis and his family have every right to be like, we're going to decide on our own. We're not going to let any other situation or player have leverage. And I think that's probably what will wind up there. But, Georgia could be faced with the decision that if Zollers is ready to go, then do they accept that commitment? And what does that mean for Julian Lewis? Does he move on? And the third name that you got to think about here is Ryan Montgomery, because Ryan Montgomery out of Ohio, it's pretty clear to me that it feels like South Carolina has him as their guy. Ryan Montgomery has been told by South Carolina that they're not going to recruit another quarterback until Ryan Montgomery makes his decision. Florida is in it, but I get a lot of Carson Beck vibes from Ryan. He's told me that it doesn't matter how long he has to sit. If he's at Georgia getting better, developing in practice, much like Carson Beck did, then that's going to be pretty good for him, because he's a type of quarterback that I don't know if he fully realizes that, but a lot of his temperament towards this right now is he knows it's not about making him the best quarterback in 2025, 2026. It's about 2027, 2028, and 2029 when he would potentially be looking at the NFL draft. And the family really continues to be impressed by Georgia. Montgomery has already locked in an official visit for June the 22nd. We'll have a lot of talk about official visits later on in the program. But Julian has his official visit set for May 31st, June 2nd. And that's the weekend that Georgia is trying to line up a lot of its alpha targets in. So, very interesting what you got going on right here with all these guys. I think when you look at these prospects here, I think Georgia gets one of the three. I don't feel like this decision is going to take a long time to happen, because Zollers, here's a great example. I talked to him, I believe, 1st of March, early March, and I asked him, I said, what's your plan look like? And he's like, well, I'm going to play basketball for as long as I can. And then after my state championship run is over, then I'm going to take about 2 days and I'm going to schedule all my visits. I'm going to get all those visits taken in about 2 to 3 weeks. And after that, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to process everything, and then I'm going to make my decision. I'm going to commit to a school. And then after that, that one school he commits to will get his official visit. So very much that's exactly what happened. I got to see a little bit of him playing basketball. Guy's a really good athlete. He shoots some dagger threes. He sees the floor really well. He can bang inside, but his basketball career's over, and I really feel like any three of these guys would be a great get for Georgia. I think with Julian Lewis, it might be, a lot of people look at it, and this is a good way here's kind of the way I look at it. A lot of people look at it as that's that high school relationship where everybody thinks they should be together. And it's like, for some reason, that relationship never materializes. And it would be different. It would be something different for Georgia in terms of getting that 5-star quarterback. They got Brock Vandagriff, who was probably top 15 in 2021. But Julian, I think, would have a great career at Georgia. It would just be getting him to the finish line to sign with Georgia and then get him on the field. I think that's the hardest part. His dad even was very honest with me in a recent interview. He said, there's no way I kind of really see Julian sitting 3 years like Carson Beck did, but he thought that Julian could sit one at a place like Georgia. And let's face it, guys, the last time a Georgia quarterback had to come in and play right away, that was more about desperation with the first 2 seasons of Kirby Smart with Jacob Eason, and then also with Jake Fromm after Jacob Eason went down. But like since then, you've seen Georgia, definitely go with the really mature, composed passer. It looks like to me, from years of covering the Georgia beat, is that freshman year, you've got to get chewed on by that great Georgia number 1 defense, number 2 defense by that freshman phenom is going to run scout team. He's going to find out what he is. The coaches are going to see what he's about. They're kind of going to teach him the rules of the road in terms of being a Georgia quarterback. So, those are the things that I see coming right now with the quarterback talk. I don't think, like I said earlier, I don't think eventually that I don't see Julian Lewis sticking with USC. I think I see he'll eventually probably end up with Auburn, Alabama, or Georgia, and I think it's going to be very fascinating to see how all that works out. It's it's definitely unorthodox, even in this day and age, to have a 5-star quarterback or even a top 100 quarterback like Zollers taking visits in June. Like, I can't imagine that. I can't see Julian Lewis going into June and taking 3 or 4 officials and trying to figure out his decision from there. I think it will happen a lot quicker than that. And that right there is what I have to say about quarterbacks right now in the class of 2025. That's on my mind right now about quarterbacks. Coming back down, we got our second thing on our before the hedges. We got number 2 on our Big Five. It's official visit season, and even though the Dawgs currently have the number 10 recruiting class in the country, I think I was joking with Kaylee last week after our show. Maybe we need to create a graphic. You know those funny things in the Simpsons cartoon show that's been on forever about how it's been so-and-so days since an accident for a safety-free workplace. It kind of feels like for the first time since I've been covering Georgia that it has been a long time. I believe the last current commitment Georgia got was in the I believe that it's still standing, was like October of I believe that's right. Yeah, October of 2023 is the last time Georgia got a commitment for the 2025 class, and that was Bo Walker. Elias Williams had been committed longer than that. Jaden Perlotti had been committed longer than that. Ethan Barbour and Bo Walker kind of came back-to-back there. So it has been a while for since Georgia got a commitment for the 2025 class. I do see that changing within the next month or so, and I also kind of see Georgia getting its first commitment for the 2026 class. I don't have one of those yet, which is also a little unorthodox for this time of year. Let's take a look right now. What we have now is we have a lot of official visits coming on board, and Georgia's starting to populate. Now, this is the one that Georgia has set up as its A1A, its 30A type official visit weekend. That's the first weekend out of the gate, and you see a lot of guys that Georgia has already kind of gotten confirmed or committed for that first weekend. You see Julian Lewis there. That official visit has been set. Zayden Walker, the number 2 linebacker in the country now out of Sly County in Ellaville. Isaiah Gibson, that's a guy that really has came on strong recently. He was probably, in my opinion, the best edge in the 2025 class that was at the Atlanta Under Armour Regional. Juan Gaston Jr., Georgia asked him for it. He took it. Travis Smith Jr., that's his Westlake High School teammate. Westlake just got a brand new head coach. Chris Ewald out of Hollywood, Florida, former Michigan commitment there. Really good-looking cornerback, impressive prospect there. And then we had him recently on DawgNation's Before the Hedges last week. Darren Akinabon of Hillside, New Jersey. Really impressive, 6'6", 250-pound defensive edge prospect out of Hillside, New Jersey. Darren told us that Uzo Daribi has told him he is one of the top target, the number 1 target for the class of 2025. So that's the start, May 31st to June 2nd. Of course, Clemson's got big official visits set up for this weekend, and then we move the page to the next week of official visits. And again, you got some slobber knocker type official visitors here. David Sanders Jr., the number 1 offensive tackle. He just visited Georgia this past weekend for a key unofficial visit. Georgia, he's told me, checks all the boxes. That was another very strong unofficial there for David Sanders and his family with Georgia. You got DJ Pickett. That's a guy that's rated as a corner. Georgia's in his top 5. I think Georgia is looks at DJ Pickett with his size and length as more of a safety prospect there. Moving on, you've got Dijon Lee, really impressive corner, lots of length out of Mission Viejo, California. Georgia just hosted him for multiple days over the weekend, and I think it feels like to me that Georgia is now surging in Dijon Lee's recruitment. And that's interesting because you haven't really seen a lot of defensive back chatter so far for this class. Another edge, look for Georgia to sign maybe 2 or 3 edges in this class. Jared Smith out of Alabaster, Alabama, 6'6", 230 pounds. A guy that has been coming to Georgia for years and years and years. Another intriguing guy right here, Tavion Wallace. First week of these visits, he's actually going to be at Arkansas. Florida State is a team to watch here. Going back to Sanders, the previous week for Sanders, he's going to be at Clemson. Clemson and Georgia are very much contenders there for David Sanders. Ty Jackson, a really impressive-looking linebacker, as I was talking about earlier. Florida State's a team to watch there with Ty Jackson as well as Tavion Wallace. You got a big edge out of Indiana, Marion Dye. He's another guy. You talk about Georgia and the edge position. That's another top 200 level prospect right there. coming up for that week. Following, we flip the page. Kirby Smart in Athens is going to be busy every weekend. They have 3 successive weeks of June where they're hosting official visitors. You move ahead to June the 14th to June the 16th. You have Anquan Newboy Figgins, another guy out of Alabaster, Alabama, and that powerful Thompson High program. Bryce Davis out of Grimsley High School, another guy that could play defensive end, could be an edge for Georgia out of Grimsley High School. That's the same school that produced Jamal Jarrett. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, really love this young man's story. You're going to read about him on DawgNation.com very soon. He is a guy at IMG Academy. His older brother, it was an All-American linebacker at Notre Dame. Georgia is one of his 3 official visits he's got set so far with Stanford, I believe, and Texas A&M are the other schools he has set official visits to up to this point. Nathaniel's at IMG Academy, and he actually spent a lot of time with Georgia over the weekend. Really impressive kid. Really liked this young man's demeanor and his makeup. He's the only recruit in America right now that has been able to see Georgia practice on Thursday and Saturday of last week. He wanted to see a multiple-day visit because he knows after a few hours on campus, no matter how good the actors are, they eventually just get real and they kind of start being genuine, and they're going to treat you, and you're going to see how actually Georgia is. That's what he wanted to see there. Jalen Gilchrist, that's the name right here. Guy out of Virginia Beach, Virginia, Salem High School. Now, I want you guys to think about this. What comes to your mind when you think about Salem High School? Salem is the high school in the state of Virginia that sent Chris Cole, the really impressive 2024 linebacker signee to Georgia. He became a 5-star, so you got a former high school teammate there. Ben Hanks Jr. out of Miami, Florida, another really impressive cornerback type right there. You see C.J. Wiley Jr. out of Milton High School, guy that I feel checks every box for what the Dogs are looking for. He had 68 catches, 1,473 yards, 14 touchdowns for the 7A state champions in Georgia. He's trained by Terrence Edwards as well. C.J. Wiley, that's a guy that very impressive target in state with the state of Georgia. I think Georgia's chances were a little bit higher with BMAC because that family had been recruited so well by BMAC for years, but I still think Georgia's got a really great shot. Third week of June already, we've got Jamarian Morrow out of Germantown, Tennessee. That's right outside of Memphis. Now, he's only about 5'10", about 190 pounds, but Georgia looks at him and sees a DeAndre Swift, a James Cook type, very elusive. That first 10 yards is very special for Mr. Morrow. He was actually at practice on Saturday as well. He was watching Georgia. He was watching Trevor Etienne very closely. We're going to have a lot on Morrow, a little bit more on Morrow later on in the show. It's probably going to make you laugh. And then here you got NFL legacy, Eugene Hilton Jr. Got to visit with him. You're going to hear from Eugene Hilton as well later on in this show about how that Georgia visit went right there. But he's got a visit scheduled for that third weekend in June. He's trying to go that weekend with C.J. Wiley as well. Those two guys know each other. There's the chance. They're talking about the chance to play together, and really Georgia would love to be able to put together a signing class in 2025 that includes Hilton, Wiley, and then Travis Smith from that first official visit weekend at the end of May and then the 1st of June. And then you move on to the last week, and again, some more big names here, some more heavy hitters. Zion Grady out of Enterprise, Alabama, a guy that really loves Georgia. Zion had his official visit here locked in with Georgia for this weekend for a couple of months now. It was already locked in when we saw him at the end of February at the Under Armour Atlanta camp. Big tackle out of Toms River, New Jersey, Jalen Matthews as well. Cortez Smith, Parkview High School. I mean, the simplest thing I can say there is you're going to get a lot of Cedric Von Granger vibes. I've gotten those for multiple years, not only when I talk to him, but you watch him on film. He's an All-American. Would likely be, if he chose Georgia, the center of the future at Georgia. Ryan Matthews, the quarterback we mentioned earlier in our quarterback talk earlier in our earlier segment here on Before the Hedges. And then Joshua Moore, another speedy wide receiver out of Pembroke Pines, Florida, the 3-star Joshua Moore. So you got a lot of official visit chatter going on right there. And, you know, there's going to be some more put together. One of the things, if you astute viewers and longtime listeners, viewers, friends of the Before the Hedges program brought to you by Kroger, one of the things you've noticed is like, hey, dude, Jeff, what's up? I got a question. There's really no official visits from none of the commits yet. And I found that very interesting. But right now, what I'm hearing is that none of the Georgia's 5 commitments for this class have set their official visits at this time. I'm betting that you'll probably see guys like Bo Walker and Ethan Barbour probably choose that first weekend out of the gate when Georgia really tries to establish momentum with the class. They've done this for years and years now, going back. And I think that's probably why you'll see that. You know, Ethan Barbour and Bo Walker, those are the guys that are talking about that commit to the G Challenge. They're going to try and figure out how many guys they can claim as that's the guy that they swayed. They were the major pull. They were the major liaison between Georgia and another commitment. They're going to try to keep track of and stack up and compete and see which one of those guys helps the most Georgia big-time priority targets actually commit to the G. Very interesting to think about there. And this is a part of our show where I think this is the part of our show we're going to go to number 3 here on our Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. We're going to do something, and listen, we got a full-blown interview with Jamarian Morrow to write about. It'll probably be a segment on Before the Hedges next week. But sometimes I'm sitting here going, you know what? What can we do to make the people laugh? And I was talking to Jamarian Morrow about his Georgia visit. He's already got his official visit set. He launched into a Kirby Smart story that I haven't really quite heard before. You want to get on Kirby's bad side at a practice, then do this. I thought it was hilarious. I'd never heard it before, and I wanted you to hear it tonight on Before the Hedges.
Yeah, and I love how the coaches get around and how they compete throughout the whole practice, and they be pretty hard on them, but that's what I want.
Did you get a chance to talk to Kirby?
Yeah, I got to talk to him a bit. My little brother, man, he pretty energetic about ball too, and he was walking around, and they saw him. We got to talk a little bit.
What did he tell you? What was the big thing that you remember Kirby talking to you about?
I remember him saying that he had watched my film and that he was thrilled about me being up there, and he was pretty hard on everybody about them phones. He don't like them phones.
Everybody on their phone, huh? Yeah.
He was like, he kept saying, like, if you're a recruit and you're on your phone, man, you might well go home. He don't want you.
Wow. So you tucked that phone, like, back in your drawers, right, or something like that? You're like,
yeah, I was already watching practice, but, yeah, I'm only looking for the time at that point.
Man, they got you, so you don't even want to look at the phone for the time, huh? That's crazy.
Man, don't take it. I ain't even take it all the way out of my pocket no more.
Pretty funny. I couldn't make that up, right? Kirby Smart had to get on his bad side at a practice. Find yourself looking at your phone. It was funny. Jamarian was like, "Hey, man, I didn't even want to get my phone out to even check the time." He said he kept that phone tucked into his pocket, and he didn't come out of that pocket with his phone right there. I thought that was a very humorous story about Kirby Smart as he evolves with big-time recruits on unofficial visits at Georgia practices. Pretty good stuff there. We teased it early in our show. Let's get to it right now. Eugene Hilton Jr., an NFL legacy. James Coley recruited his dad when he was on his way to Florida International. Coley was the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator there many moons ago. Their family has been tight ever since. There's a trust there over the years that just really cannot be duplicated. He finally got to see Georgia. What were his impressions? Who bent his ear and really told him everything he needed to know about Georgia? That's our DawgNation conversation right now with Eugene Hilton Jr.
I mean, it was awesome. Got to see the environment, got to talk to the coaches. I mean, I loved it.
Anything stuck out to you as like eye-opening or like better than you thought it might have been?
The practices, those were awesome. I mean, I love how they competed, and I love how fast-paced it was.
I think I heard obviously you were there, and like I think I heard you were talking to Ladd McConkey for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Are you picking his brain? Is he telling you about what it might be like? What was that conversation like?
I mean, he came up to me, and he was like, "What's up, Eugene?" I was like, "Yo, what up?" Like, I didn't think he knew me. And then we just started talking. I mean, I was kind of just asking him questions about, like, UGA and, like, his package. You know, it's different, you know, like, how he liked it, just all of that. I mean, we kind of just talked. I mean, he's a great dude. I mean, we kind of talked about, like, everything. Yeah, I really like it. Yeah.
Did he tell you something that you needed to know, or it reinforced what you were feeling, or anything like that? Did he tell you something interesting?
I mean, everything he told me, like, you could see on the practice field, like, it was the truth. Like, you could tell. I mean, they compete. You gonna come here to get better, like all that. So, I mean, yeah, he kind of just gave me a little bit of wisdom on Georgia. Like in the whole, like he telling me like they really like me and all this, but you know it's more about putting the time in, you know, especially when you know you have free time, like you know, are you going in to catch jugs and like stuff like that? So yeah.
How was the face-to-face with Tully? How'd that go?
It was awesome. It was great to see him again. We had some great talks, you know. It was just overall amazing to see him again and really talk to him about, you know, his process because, you know, he just came in and all that.
What's the feeling like? This is a natural question for athletes after a first visit. What's the feeling like when you leave Georgia yesterday?
It just felt like, how do I describe it? It felt like, you know, it was welcoming, but at the same time, like, you could feel the energy, like, in that building. So I think that's what I kind of took away, like, when you left, like, you felt like the energy and the presence of it.
Have you scheduled anything yet with him, another official?
I set up an official for June 14th through the 17th.
Oh, wow. Why does that one make sense for you? Is that a good date for you? Or like...
Yeah, but I'm mainly trying to get down there. There's another receiver, CJ Wiley. Yeah.
So, yeah. Did you get a chance to kind of tag up with him a little bit? I mean, that's a big dude.
I've known him for a little bit. So.
Have you really?
Yeah, we talked a little bit.
You both got pro dads, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for you now, what's the next step forward? I mean, I think you even put the edit out there that something's happening soon. Is it still happening soon? Like, what's the next step?
Yeah. I meant like soon, as in like, you know, before the season, before June. I'm gonna try to get in before June. So, you know, hopefully I commit sometime in May. I think that's the plan.
Do you have any other officials scheduled right now at any other schools?
Just Wisconsin, May 30th to June 2nd.
Did your dad get to go to the visit with you and eyeball it and take a look?
Yeah, me and my dad went. Next time I'm gonna try to bring my mom. So
what was your dad's view? Did he say like that looks like a pro practice or something like that?
He was just like, yeah, kind of. He was like, he loved the way they competed as well. He liked the offense they ran. You know, he kind of like everything about it, and he loved the fact that, you know, wherever you go, everyone has a chance to compete. So what was huge was, I know, like, you know, I knew the culture and everything was going to be good, but the competitiveness, that's something I really liked. I mean, just standing on the sidelines at practice, you know, it made me want to go out there and, you know, play. So.
That end point right there, the end quote right there. Eugene Hilton Jr. said, it made me want to go out there and play. That's what you want to hear from Georgia's wide receiver targets when they see Georgia practice for the first time. I know for a fact, if you guys have been paying attention, Eugene Hilton Jr. did not have his cell phone out at that practice. He did not face the wrath of Kirby Smart for doing so. A couple takeaways from that clip, from that package. Very interesting to hear about how the vibe, how the aura, what it just felt like to be in Athens. It kind of struck him. He said that was the really huge thing, the feeling of being at Georgia. There's a connection there with C.J. Wiley as well. Both of those guys have NFL dads. Of course, T.Y. Hilton with Eugene, and then Chuck Wiley with C.J. Wiley at Milton. So there's a relationship there. Eugene said he'd really love to play with C.J. Wiley if that made sense for both parties. And he sounds like he's going to try and make sure that there's a chance to do that at Georgia, because it sounds like they're going to take their official visit together as well. Really cool stuff there with Eugene Hilton Jr. That was a big first visit there for him to check out Athens. And also, I know a lot of people get a little impatient, like Brandon Adams, when he sees soon on a commitment edit. He feels like he's got to have. He might be talking about that on DawgNation Daily the very next day, but Sounds like with Eugene listening to the ground and everything else like that, paying attention to everything you hear, that maybe May or June might be when he probably feels like would be the best time to make his commitment. So it's not soon as the way like an impatient 5-year-old child would want to see Georgia get its next commitment, or anybody that ends up winning Eugene Hilton Jr.'s recruitment. It's going to be a little bit longer than most people would think was soon with his commitment. I thought that was good stuff with Eugene. I always appreciate his time right there. Moving on, another DawgNation conversation. We're now going to number 5 in our Big Five, and I thought we would just go with one of those guys that makes football matter, one of those guys up front. I want you to hear this from Zier Addison. He went to the Under Armour camp in Orlando earlier this year. He was named the O-line MVP. He was kind of dominant. I saw him up close and personal at the Pylon 7-on-7 earlier this month. They have on offensive lineman 5-on-5 challenges now. Kind of a cross between volleyball and then 7-on-7 football, but it's a way for the big guys to get after it a little bit at those big 7-on-7 camps. Zier Addison, you're going to be stunned by how articulate and how impressive he is. He says the Dogs want him. He wants to be a plastic surgeon one day. He has got off-the-charts athleticism, but I'm not going to give away the good stuff in the interview. I want you to hear it right now on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. Zier Addison, man, 2025 OL out of Florida. It really sounds like the Dogs want you. Why do the Dogs have a chance with you?
The Dogs have a chance with me, and they want me because I'm one of the most athletic and one of the best, if not the best, lineman in the country. I run a 200 and 100 meter in the track, and I also wrestle, and they really love my athleticism. They love how since I've been to the camp my freshman year, I put on 40 pounds and still be able to dunk the ball. They love my athleticism. They love my length. They love how I can play 1 through 5, and of course they got a chance with me because they're the best player. They're the best team in the country.
How are they recruiting you? What type of intensity are they coming at you with?
Really heavy. You know, it's not just Zeros that's coming after me, but it's the whole entire staff, to the running back, the tight ends coach, and, you know, the assistant line coach, and, you know, Zeros as well.
How do they see you? Can you play a lot of positions?
Yes, I can play 1 through 5, play left tackle, right tackle, center, whatever they need me to play, I can play. But I see myself as a left tackle going to college.
Have you been to Georgia recently?
No, sir, I haven't.
What are you looking for with your next visit?
I'm looking for, when I go up there, I'm looking for the atmosphere and where I can fit in the system. You know, just building. I know I just got offered, so of course building a relationship with the coaches as well.
Have you scheduled any officials? Might Georgia get one?
Georgia might get one, and I did. I have Clemson, Florida State, and Oregon locked in.
Clemson, Florida State, and Oregon are locked in. Do you know the dates on those?
May 31st for Clemson. Florida State is 21st to the 23rd, and Oregon is 7th to the 9th.
So Georgia has a chance to get in June, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Think there's a high probability of that?
It should be a high probability. If I can't get in with them in June, I'll get in with them in the end of the season.
Are you looking to make your decision at any certain time? Do you have a timeline?
Yes, sir. August.
August?
Yes, sir.
Why does August make sense for you?
I was planning to do it in July, but it's getting kind of crazy, so I'm pushing it back to August.
This is a new question I have to ask intelligent young men like yourself. NIL. Is that a piece? Is that a portion? How do you look at that?
It's a piece, but it's not the main thing. I'm not going to go to a school because they pay me all this money. I'm looking for it to get developed. I'm looking at the long-term goal of making the NFL and who's going to develop me to get there.
Think about you going to your favorite restaurant, your favorite wing place. There's things you want to see on the menu. What do you want to see in the right school? What boxes have to be checked there?
Make sure my family on board, of course. If my family not on board with the program, I'm not on board with the program. Number 2, looking at the development of the offensive lineman they put out every year, single-handedly, single out, and of course competing for and winning a national championship.
Plastic surgeon, man. Tell me about that.
It's something I always wanted to do growing up. And my long-term goal is, of course, I always been my backup plan, but now I see me as a 10-year guy and going back to school and get my education to become a plastic surgeon.
That's how you get a nickname? What does everybody call you?
Big Z.
Big Z?
Yes, sir.
Now, let's pop the hood on your game. Check the oil. What makes you a successful lineman? What are the tools in your tool bag?
So, originally, I was a defensive end, and tight end going to my freshman and my sophomore year. I switched over to the offensive line position because I was naturally gifted with the hands, and of course, my athleticism is displayed on my tape. And if anybody that does watch my tape and watch my game, you can clearly see my athleticism, my length, and the development from my sophomore year to my junior year tape. it's a big difference in my game. I'm really more dominant in the run game. I can pull out in space, and I'm just more of a natural offensive lineman now compared to my sophomore tape. I want people to know is I'm really long. I have a 36, 37-inch arm, and I'm very athletic. Like I said before, I run track. I run a 200, 100 meter track, and I wrestle. And all of that displays on my tape.
Tell you what, guys, he wants to be a plastic surgeon, but it sounds like he could be in communications as well. Zier Addison, Florida, 4-star, one of the best offensive line in the country. His California power team just took home the trophy here at the Pylon game. That was number 5 from a guy that says he could play 1 through 5 across the offensive line. Very interesting. One of the things you learn from recruits now is Georgia's previous offensive line assistant, the coach Searles, was Manry Saint or more. Del McGee hired him along with a legion of other Georgia staffers to come help him build Georgia State. Noah will do a great job there. But Georgia has a new offensive line assistant now, and it's former Bulldog Warren Erickson. It wasn't that long ago when Warren Erickson was a part of a Georgia highly ranked class, and now he's doing the recruiting on his own for the trench guys for the offensive line. A couple things there. He mentioned Clemson, he mentioned Oregon, he mentioned Florida State. Those are schools he's already set official visits with, and Clemson, the one catches my ear because they've got him for May 31st to June 2nd with all their premier targets. Clemson is really trying to load up like Georgia did 2 or 3 years ago in terms of building their program with an incredible elite offensive line. If they get Addison, if they got Sanders, that would certainly qualify with that. They're actually chasing Mason Short as well, another big Georgia target. But Clemson, to me, who just picked up a commitment this weekend from Tay Harris out of Cedartown, former Georgia commitment. Tay's a really cool kid, really mature kid. Georgia there was a kind of a stopgap in communication when Georgia lost some defensive backs coaches. He didn't hear from the kind of fountain of communication, kind of slowed down to a trickle, and he decided to decommit because he didn't feel like he was getting the same attention. He didn't feel like Georgia was still wanted him or prioritized him, and he ends up coming back he signs to Clemson. But over the last couple of weeks prior to that commitment, Tay Harris had gotten increased communication from Georgia. Travaris Robinson as well, T-Rob as well, had started recruiting back again. He was hearing a lot. He went down to Miami, I believe, and ran a 4.38 at the Under Armour Miami camp, turned a lot of eyes, brought on even more attention, and it was really mature the way he handled it. He was like, hey, man, no hard feelings. I was still going to give Georgia a shot. Georgia was home, and he told me matter-of-factly recently that if that kind of communication gap or lapse didn't happen with the Dawgs, he would still be committed to Georgia right now. But that's kind of the way recruiting works out. That's kind of the way recruiting relationships work out. But I thought it was very mature of Tay Harris, who he was, how he wasn't bitter, and he still gave Georgia a chance to get back into it, but ultimately decide to just move forward and commit to Clemson. That's a school he felt good about, and he saw no need to wait. So that's good stuff right there. More of that Clemson, Georgia talk right there on the recruiting trail. I think that's why I wanted to I kind of wanted to segue to that topic because our question of the week this week has to do with something. Nick Saban is no longer there. Kalen DeBoer is in Alabama. You guys know that. I kind of wanted the question of the week this week. I wanted to ask you guys, and something on my mind right now is like, who do you think is currently the biggest rival for Georgia in college football? Is it Alabama still? Is it the new Alabama? Is it Ohio State? Is it the Gators? Is it Auburn? Is it Georgia Tech? Some of the more of those historical examples. And this is one of those two-parters that all those beat reporters give Kirby Smart during his weekly press sessions, is what about the recruiting trail? Who do you think is the biggest rival for Georgia on the recruiting trail? And I'm going to hyper-localize this and say 2025 classes going forward. I think the biggest rival for Georgia right now on the recruiting trail, you probably know my answer. I think that's Clemson, with a side of Alabama and maybe a little Ohio State in there. Those are the really peer rival schools that I think can recruit head-to-head with Georgia and win. Remains to be seen if Clemson will be able to recruit head-to-head with Georgia and win. There'll be a lot of bouts on the trail for both those two programs right now. The same thing goes for Alabama and DeBoer. And I think currently the biggest rival for Georgia in college football on the field, I'd probably say that's Alabama. I think for a lot of reasons we don't want to dive into. Those are my opinions there. Love to see what you guys have to say in the comment section about biggest recruiting rival and also biggest on-field put the ball in the dirt and let's figure out who's better rival for Georgia on the field. Pretty cool stuff right there. Let's take a look at our weekly Kibbles and Bits, I believe is what we called it this week. I always challenge myself to come up with a creative name for our class breakdowns. You see there, Bo Walker, he committed, kind of following up on that thread that I talked about earlier. It's been a long time, guys, since Georgia got a 2025 commitment. Bo Walker was in October of 2023. Elias was much earlier than that in the 2022 year. Ethan Barbour committed in September of 2023. Those are your offensive commitments right there. I think it's going to be very hard for Georgia to hold on to Elias, but I think they can. Justice Terry, he committed to Georgia also in the year 2022 as well. I believe he actually committed to Georgia in January of 2023. And then Jaden Perlotti, who committed in December of 2022. So there's been some decommitments, but it has been quite a while since Georgia got a commitment in the 2025 class. Currently just 5 Bulldogs committed right now. That will rapidly change. We'll get to the month of July, and there'll probably be 18 to 22 committed by then. That's your class breakdown on offense and defense. Let's take a look at the snapshot. And, again, you guys won't believe it, but right there in the middle, bullseye, you got 10 Bulldogs. You got 5 commitments, and then you've got 10, number 10 class ranked nationally, 3 on offense, 2 on defense. All those commitments are from the state of Georgia. All of those are obviously in the SEC footprint. There are 3 offensive players among the highest rated, among the 5 highest rated commitments, and there are 3 offensive players among the 10 highest rated commitments because there's only 5. That's a number we continually focus on here on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger, because the Dogs will have the dudes on the defensive side of the ball. It's all about now making sure that they have the counter punch, or they have the alphas, and they have the big-time targets on the offensive side of the ball as well to complement what Georgia recruits kind of naturally and seamlessly every year right there. There's 2 5-stars. That's Justice Terry and Elias Williams. Those are also the only those are also the top 50 commitments right there. You've also got top 100 commits. You got 3 of those, adding Perlotti into the mix with Terry and Elias Williams. And then they also have just 3 top 150 commitments. Same for top 200 commitments. Ethan Barbour has actually drifted outside the top 200 overall recruits nationally on the 24/7 Sports composite ratings. Now, big part of our show, we always save this for last. This is the top targets. These are the recruits that we feel Georgia is really working the most on, hardest. This is always a blend of need and mutual affection on both sides. You see Zier Addison. You just saw him in our DawgNation Conversation. Zion Grady. How many edges are Georgia going to get? I certainly think I certainly think Zion Grady could be one of those. Eugene Hilton Jr., he's number 13 this week. We heard from him in our DawgNation Before the Hedges Big 5. Dijon Lee Jr., some sites have him as a 5-star. The composite has him just outside 5-star status. Out of Mission Viejo, had a very terrific unofficial visit weekend in Athens. C.J. Wiley out of Milton, Georgia, recently named to Macon Super 7 from the Macon Touchdown Club for the top 7 returning juniors, rising seniors in Georgia high school football. Isaiah Gibson, another guy, he had a really cool tweet this weekend that a lot of people paid attention to after he visited Georgia this weekend. He had a tweet, kind of cryptic, kind of not, where he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but something about feels like the dog in me right now. Isaiah Gibson out of Warner Robins, we talked about him earlier. We talked about him a lot as an edge right now, and I feel like if you want to know who's probably the most likely edge for Georgia to sign, I think Isaiah Gibson would probably be one of my top 2 or 3 names for sure. Matt Zollers, Royersford, Pennsylvania, going to visit Georgia, I believe, on April the 2nd. And then by that time, Georgia gets his last unofficial visit, and he'll probably have a decision in about a week to 10 days thereafter that. Number 9 and number 8, Julian Lewis. That's kind of where we put both the quarterbacks right now. Julian is still committed to USC. That's the first half. The other 1 through 7 on your top targets, these have kind of stayed the same for a while because I feel like probably where they need to be. Darren Akinabon out of Hillside, New Jersey. We recently had him on Before the Hedges last week. Juan Gaston Jr., he was also at that Macon Touchdown Club meeting as one of the Super 7 juniors in the state of Georgia. Cortez Smith comes in at number 5. Travis Smith Jr. at number 4. Zayden Walker at number 3. Hadn't been back to Athens. Be interesting to see if he makes it back for G-Day. Elijah Griffith just took another great visit, checking out Georgia as well. Georgia continues to get really cozy there with Elijah Griffin. But those top 2 guys right there, guys, no promises whatsoever on those 2. It is going to be an absolute war for probably most of these top early targets. Georgia will have to earn the commitments by recruiting these guys very well, very consistently, and better than anybody else for multiple years. And also you have David Sanders Jr. there as well, the 5-star offensive tackle, just visited Georgia this past weekend. It was another impressive visit for Sanders and his family. Those are your top early targets. Now let's go to just off the list to catch those names that we think are right there in the mix as well. Georgia only has 5 commitments, and I think you're probably going to see Georgia end up with about maybe 18 to 20 names off these lists right here when you count the top targets and just off the list. Anquan Fegans out of Alabaster. Bryce Davis also got to check out Georgia again recently. Dante Fulton, that's a guy that doesn't have a Georgia offer yet. We've been talking about him for a while. That could change, and if it does change, things will get very interesting with Big Play Tay out of Worth County and the Dawgs. Christian Garrett, that's another guy that's visiting Clemson that first official visit weekend, the last weekend in May, first couple of days of June. Lagonza Hayward, that's a guy very impressive out of the state of Georgia, Toombs County as well. Ty Jackson, he's given Georgia an official visit as well. Looking at the rest of the just off the list, we've got a few more names to take a look at right here in terms of getting those guys that aren't quite top targets that we feel are really trending hard to Georgia and Georgia really wants, but we feel like anybody that makes that just off the list, we can very much see them becoming a part of the Georgia class one day. Ryan Montgomery, really like this quarterback. I know that's a lot of people are concentrating on Zollers and Julian Lewis with some very good reason, but I really think Ryan Montgomery could be a great fit in Athens as well. There's just something substantial about Ryan and his family. His older brother is at Ohio State. He was an All-American offensive lineman. We mentioned Joshua Moore. You heard from Jamarion Morrow. That's the guy that told the funny story about Kirby Smart and cell phones. Josh Petty out of Roswell, Georgia. He's got a couple of official visits scheduled, he told me, but they're in the process of getting rescheduled. So we kind of held off on what he looks like in terms of Georgia's official visit plans. Jared Smith, Mason Short, Eric Winters. That's a guy we really like his game. Somebody sees him as a safety, but he's a guy that's probably trending really hard right now to Auburn. He just took another big visit right there. And then another massive country strong defensive lineman knows. That's Kevin Wynn out of Greensboro, Georgia. Folks, that is your just off the list. We've had ourselves a show. We've put another show together. We've talked about quarterbacks. We've talked about how you get Kirby Smart mad when you're at a practice. We had some stuff from Eugene Hilton Jr. In detail, we try to give you guys the best picture of what the official visits look like right now. Still several months away, but we got a pretty good picture of what June is going to start to look like there for the Dawgs moving forward. And also, we got a little tease there for next generation. Who's going to be the new next generation subject profile? I'd love to see if you guys can figure it out in the comment section below. But guys, go get to Kroger. You know what you need to do. Do that old school Krogering. They're going to take care of your Sunday dinners. They're going to take care of your upcoming Easter plans, your egg hunts, your baskets, your candy. You know what to do when you get down those aisles at Kroger. Guys, laid it all out for you. That has been your intel. Thanks for joining us. Hope you guys have a blessed week. I'm Jeff Sentell. As I said earlier, that's been your intel, and we'll see you guys again later on the pages of DawgNation.com. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
I love the family atmosphere and the way they handle business. Education is important, trying to reach the next level.